Sharon Rodriguez, welcome to Punks and Pinstripes. We're delighted to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Sharon, before we talk about your time in Malaysia and at MetLife, is it true that you once tagged turtles?
I did.
Tell me about tagging turtles.
I'm a lifelong learner. I love different experiences. It's like just who I am. In college, I did do a small, short stint in marine biology. So I did tag turtles and, find different species of frogs in swamps in Florida and such.
Did you find it gross, or were you so into marine biology that you were like actually into it?
What's gross about nature? I mean, swimming.
Nature's not gross. Swamps?
Yeah, well, it's part of the experience. Would I do it again? I'm not really sure the swamp part. The tagging turtles was really fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite type of turtle?
No, not necessarily.
All right.
No, there were big ones with big claws. You kind of had to be careful with them.
All right, we're going to fast forward a little bit.
Okay.
All right, this is, so I have done a little bit of research with some of my spies.
He has some of those.
I want you to take me to the moment in 2013 where you had to go to the MetLife office in Malaysia. It's you, it's David Sullivan. There is some political clusterfuck happening inside of MetLife.
Every day of the week, yes.
And I want you to take me to that moment where you met him at the bar, you drank a huge amount of wine, and something called Plan B started to get hatched.
Yeah.
What happened? Take me into the room that day, that moment, that napkin.
So I think a couple of different things. One, I joined a team that I thought, wow, I've never been on a team like this with people who are a little bit, I would say they were a little bit of the punks, right? Like they were the folks that wanted to challenge authority, didn't really want to go with the status quo. We were kind of always trying to think about what could be innovative and different, how we could approach problems differently. And I think for the first time in my career, I found people that I felt were kindred spirits in many ways. So I'll start with that was the team I was on, right? And those kindred spirits and I had a lot of mandates from the top of the company. We were reporting into the C-level constantly with the senior leadership team of the entire company and seeing the ridiculousness that is in corporate America, which was let's pit teams against each other and try to figure out where the business doesn't like what technology is doing and operations is fighting with tech and distribution doesn't think that that the operations team knows what it's doing. So there was a lot of all this infighting, and here we are sitting in Malaysia with these teams, and that's what we were sent there to do, which was basically fight for turf. On who would be able to develop the best technologies for the global teams. The
first rule about Malaysia is you don't talk about Fight Club.
And it was 150 degrees. It was sweaty, and it was awful, right? And so we're sitting there for days on end in these conference rooms having these battles, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I make a lot of money. And I'm sitting in this chair, and I've been given all these mandates and things to do, and I have a big responsibility. And I don't know how I achieve any of those goals, first of all, with a room full of people who are fighting each other on the same topic. And two, what the hell are we doing here? This can't be it, right? And, after the end of 5 days and, you've been away from home and you're in a different country and you should be experiencing it and you should be enjoying being with all of these different folks from all over the world that are in this room, you just really hate it. And you just don't know what the hell are we doing here. And so, yeah, Dave and I went to the airport, and we missed our connecting flight because that's what happens. And we ended up in a hotel bar drinking copious amounts of red wine in these giant glasses. And during that time, it's there has to be something different than this. And if the team that I'm with for the first time ever, I feel like I found my family and the people that I could work with, is there something that we could all do together that really could speak to us and drive, and that we have the drive to do it? So why don't we come up with some ideas? And at that point in time, we were pretty deep into the MetLife culture. We spent 2 full years working our day jobs. And then around 4 o'clock, we'd have coffee. Around 6 o'clock, we'd call it a day for our day jobs. And we'd work till 11 o'clock every single night. whiteboarding. We came up with 3 different ideas, 2 different patents were submitted during that time before we even left the building. And I think the single most important part of all of that is that we were all in it together. And we all had a healthy respect for each other and challenged each other effectively. And we weren't babies, right? Like our first trip out to Silicon Valley to ask for investors, they were like, you guys are old. And we were like, indeed we are. Right? We're not sleeping on people's couches and couch surfing in San Francisco. We actually know what we're doing, and we've been on both sides of the table. And I think that was like the winning moment for us to actually sit down and say, like, you know what, we've got something here. We have the energy to do this. And I think it took a leap of faith, to be quite frank. I'm an immigrant's kid, and there's like two kinds of immigrants, like the kinds that like are like, oh, we're going to be entrepreneurs and like we're in this new country and we're going to build businesses. And then there's my parents who are like, you will go get a job that has a pension, a 401k, right, some health insurance, and you will have stability in your life, and this is the way it's going to be.
So are there any immigrant kids that none of you can relate, right?
Right? And when I went to leave my job at MetLife, I'm like, old, paid off all my school loans, paid off my Wharton loans, like everything was like fine. My mother's like, and I'm like, Mom, I think I got this. Like, it's fine.
I think a lot of us who have made that leap feel that pull.
Yeah.
Because I think, I can only speak for myself. I began my career in an investment research startup that was acquired. We were the most punk rock, awkward, weird, somewhere off the coast of Wall Street. Like, I was the most square person in this startup.
Yeah.
And it meant that all of the ideas that we were generating and feeding to hedge funds were unlike any other ideas. It was so like out there. Mm-hmm. And then because we did well, we were acquired, we're like sucked into the belly of like the beast.
Oh yeah.
In particular, Morgan Stanley. And it killed everything. Uh-huh. And I think there's this weird pull, though, which was the first time you finally find a team inside of the machine, and you're like, holy shit, it feels so good to just be inspired by one another, to know that you have each other's back, to like feel the wind in your hair of like, all right, we're going to solve a really hard problem and look out for each other. Yeah. And like you miss that. You don't even know. But then there's this thing, which is on one hand that like once you feel that, it's very hard to turn your back on it. No one fucking talks about it. But the minute you leave corporate for entrepreneurship, especially if you've done well, your spouse becomes your CFO. No one likes to fucking talk about it. It's not something, that's some laundry that doesn't get aired, but it's or your immigrant parents. Yeah. It and it doesn't matter how much money you have or how much security you have, you're gonna have that talk, that negotiation. Yeah. You're gonna have to.
Heck, I'm having it. I'm having it now. Mountain number 3 is a little bit, like another steep climb. Look, I've started yet another company, and myself and my co-founders are not taking salary in order to give ourselves a runway to build a business. I've done that consciously, recognizing that having my past experiences. An important part of the journey is hitting the right milestones for investors, for scalability, for market making, for being able to sell into bigger enterprise so you get the bigger contracts, right? And in order to do that, you need time, right? That doesn't happen overnight, no matter how good you are at your job. That's just time, and time you don't control. And so, I'm not taking salary right now. I'm looking at my bank account going, I think I might have to move some money over to my Nevado account to pay for salaries next month. And it's okay, because I have immense trust and confidence in the team that I'm building and the business I'm building, and I have to have the courage. Yeah. I have to have the courage to like talk to myself down from the conversations I have from my husband, who just looks at me and goes, okay, whatever. Do what you need to do, right? He's unbelievably supportive. We probably keep.
Can I marry your husband?
I it's kind of a pain in the ass. But you know, at this point, that's the real deal, is that I walk into those conversations with an extreme amount of confidence in what I'm building, the team that I've built, the problems I'm trying to solve, and how I'm going to approach it. And if I question that, then I go to my team, right? Like my folks, my friends, my colleagues, my network, my family, and it's the found family, not the born family. Like my found family knows where all the bodies are buried. And they're the ones that are like either standing behind me clapping and saying, go, 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 or saying, maybe you should think about this differently, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe there's a different approach to this. And those are the conversations I feel very confident in. Do I think it's hard to not have a good partner and not be able to be supported? Probably, right? I'm infinitely supported in my insanity, and that's great.
Yeah.
I mean, he also supported the fact that I wanted to have a child at 47, and here I am with a 4-year-old. So life is great.
So let's go past the napkin in Malaysia. That napkin, 3 years afterwards, becomes Unqork. Mm-hmm. Unqork is one of my favorite examples of what I call the corporate discard pile.
Oh yeah. Meaning
it was an idea that was pitched inside of MetLife, which was a no-code platform that was supposed to eliminate would have eliminated technical debt. In other words, if you're going to build an application inside of the universe of MetLife, you're not building a full stack thing. You're just saying, this is the UI, this is the functionality, these are the APIs. And there's no technical debt. We have a central depository of stack. Yeah. Everything gets built on top of that. And they're like, go fuck yourselves. Yeah. That's crazy. We have a CTO whose job is to firefight technical debt.
Yeah, all day long.
And so you build Unqork, you're shoulder to shoulder. The minute I met Gary, I'm like, I like this guy.
Oh yeah, he's a lot.
He's a lot.
He's like one of my favorite people, but he's a lot.
But so in 2019, when I first met Unqork, and we kind of flirted with me joining, you went right around that time from like 15 to, I think, 80 people in 2 months. What happens when that happens? Like hyperscale is on one hand thrilling, but there's this thing where there's and I don't think people who go through it at the time know that that's happening. Yeah. But there's this tension between scale and soul.
Yeah, 100%.
And I don't know that you have to put one over the other in a way that you never consciously knew you had to.
I think you have a culture when you start a business and you're all in it together, and you're kind of like, I mean, we were 4 people in a room, then we were 10 people in a room, then we were fighting because the trash can was too small, and so I just Amazoned a bigger trash can, right? Those are the problems we were trying to solve for, despite having clients like Goldman Sachs even when we were only 10 people in a room. When you hit those, there's different inflection points in your journey as you're building a business. And I think that things that you observe is that there's a certain culture when you're 0 to 10, and then there's a culture for 10 to 50, and then there's 50, and then there's 150. I mean, between the time that we were 80, so I was chief customer officer from before the business plan was written through 1 year after the Series C, which took us all of about 3.5, 4 years. So we were a massively growing business very, very quickly. And we were 4 people in a room, and then we were 650 employees before I could blink and miss it, of which I probably interviewed 8 to 10 people for every one person we hired. So my job became people. And not necessarily building the business. So I think that's one observation. 2 is that your culture completely shifts. And if you're not careful, it shifts away from you. And it shifts away from maybe the things that made you really special and unique in the beginning to much more of the machine. And you actually have to be, it's not necessarily that you can stop it, right? Because when you're a much bigger company, you can't have the same culture. Everybody can't be firefighting every day, right? You start to develop different needs as an organization. But you have to be very conscious of what that means to your longevity, what you want to build, who you want to be as a company, and not getting necessarily pushed in one direction or another by that cultural shift, and just being very mindful and acknowledging it. It's a hard transition. Having been in a company where there's 30,000 employees, I also had been in startups earlier in my career where I had been one of 30 or one of 50. So I had kind of been on both sides of that. I don't want to be in the company with 30,000 people. I think a sweet spot for me was probably when we got to about 150. We were still like one team. We started to very much build silos, and I don't know that you can stop. I honestly, I wish I knew that there was some secret sauce that says there's like no silos to be built when you get to that size. I don't know that that's the case, and rightly or wrongly, it's just what has to happen as an evolution. You just have to be aware of the fact that it happens and don't let it get to you. Because I think in some ways I had to mourn what we built in order to rebuild what we needed to build in order to get to that Series C.
How does what you're building at Nevado with agentic AI, like to what extent does building agentically mean that you don't have to be past your comfort? You don't have to make that sacrifice of scale and soul. If you want to build a really big company to solve really big problems, and you're constantly improving your productivity so that you can keep it in the family. Is that something that you're intentional about now?
Very much so.
And is part of that learning curve what you experienced when Unqork hyperscaled?
Yeah, look, I think a couple of things happened when we hyperscaled. One of them was our product probably wasn't as ready as we wanted it to be for the type of audience that we had in front of us, and our ability to get people up to speed on how to leverage a no-code platform quickly. That was like the Deloittes, the KPMGs of the world, like even they couldn't bring their teams up to speed fast enough, so we ended up having to build a lot of that. When I look at Nevado and the way that we work today, what I do every day, my chief of staff is named Sherpa. Sherpa is my agent. Sherpa and I have conversations at 11 o'clock at night about whatever's on my brain, and also make sure that every morning everything that's in my calendar has told me what I'm doing, has prepared me for my meetings, has summarized the day before meetings. Everything that I actually may have used human influence for before is very much contained into my desktop and superpowers me. I feel very, very comfortable with that environment and how I'm leveraging generative AI. Everybody on my team is in the same boat. In order, like we in 6 months' time made $1 million, which is pretty good given that we're selling into enterprise. And so $1 million in ARR after 5.5 months is pretty good. Doubling that a month later was really, really good. There was 4 of us doing that. By the time we got at Unqork to $2 million, we were 40 people, and we'd already spent like $8 or $10 million to build that business. So it's just different dynamic. So everybody on the team is supercharged by their ability to leverage the technology that we're building, the platform that we're on in order to deliver solutions for our clients, but are constantly thinking about how do I do something better myself? And we'll have a conversation where somebody will say, I think we need to hire XYZ. And I'm like, can you write me that job description? And somebody else says, wait, hold on a second. I think we can probably automate that part of it. And what if we had Sherpa do this part of it? And next thing you know, that job description evaporates, and we've actually figured out and solved the problem before we even thought about hiring ahead. We wouldn't have done that 5 years ago. And so I think that's the biggest piece. But that means that the type of people you bring into your business have to be open-minded into how to think about how AI can change the way you work and the way that you interact and the way that you produce in a very, very different way. And I don't think that's an age thing. I think that's a desire thing. It's about, look, my jobs were always about transformation and change and like how to make people adopt different ways of doing things. So if I can't do it myself, like shame on me. And so I think it takes a little bit of that kind of mindset of like, okay, well, this is different. Maybe I wouldn't have done this the same last year, but challenging yourself all of the time and challenging my team to do that and bringing in people who also think that way are the key. I mean, we feel like we're at 4, almost 5 people now, and we'll probably be maybe 10 to get to 7-ish million by the end of the year. It's not a whole lot of people, right? Even on the tech team. And that's a pretty good sized team and pretty high margins on our business, to be frank. And so I just feel like that's something that we can keep going. I never want to be more than 150. But who knows? Who knows?
What, how are conversations with investors different with Nevado than with previous ventures? Let me like
yeah, go
go
for
a
it.
layer deeper.
Go for it.
I have found that who is in your cap table matters more as you get older than how much they're investing.
Oh, hell yeah.
And so I guess like how are you?
Oh, hell yeah.
How has that reality sort of infused your conversation with capital markets?
It's interesting. I haven't made one outbound phone call. All calls have come into me, and I've taken one small check from a friend who's very deep in the insurance space. My technology supports the insurance industry, and largely because he's the one that kind of strong-armed me into starting this business. So that's a different conversation. But the conversations I have are really much more about their personality. Do I want to work with them? Having had a board, having worked with a board, having had investors before, oh boy, does that matter. It matters, like, are they going to help you? Are they going to hurt you? Are they going to support you? Are they going to get you more business? Are they going to be thinking about you in the right way? Can they evolve and change, right? And adapt to the market. Nobody knows what the hell is going on. 6 months from now, the world could be completely different. 6 months ago, it was completely different, right? So you have to have that adaptability. So from my perspective, their personality matters. Two, I think one of the things I've seen and observed in folks that I wouldn't talk to again is that they're very much leaning into how they've always thought about investments and not in how we should be thinking about investments now, right? So, questions around, I was just saying to somebody earlier, Sharon, what do you think you're going to be doing what do you think this company's going to do in 5 years? I'm like, are you out of your mind, dude? Like a year ago, I didn't think this business could exist. And so like, what do I know what's going to happen in 5 years? So if people are very like set in their ways and their approaches of thinking about investments and how they think about you as an investment, that's not a good place to be. And so I think those are kind of the two things that I think about. And I do think about it as being the force multiplier and not just any money on the table. Money's everywhere. Money is everywhere. Like, there was the first round of investors that came through and they were like the bigger names, because obviously having the Unqork background doesn't hurt me, just to be completely transparent. But so like, having those folks like on my radar, great. Now I'm getting more and more and more. And they're like, we'll write $500,000 checks. Like one guy just will not stop pinging us. And I'm like, I won't, like, that's not a firm I want to work with, nor do I know these people, nor can they help me, but they're willing to give me money. Right. And so money's money's everywhere, right? Like it's just about like finding the right partner to do the right things with.
Yeah. There's something like a really weird juxtaposition about the announcement from Meta that they're laying off 8,000 employees because AI. And then there's sort of what you're saying, which is like, we can grow this company because of AI and keep it in the family. And it kind of made me wonder and think, like, is the real impact culturally, in terms of the culture of working in a business, AI, is the impact of it that there's a diseconomy of scale? Meaning that a company which is bloated, which is bureaucratic, which is political, which is culturally dysfunctional, which is kind of, you rise to the top by growing your fiefdom rather than by solving important problems in a differentiated way. You survived the cage match, like what you were flown out to Malaysia to do. And it's like, at what point do the people who are the best consultants inside of McKinsey or the best insurtech minds inside of the MetLifes of the world all take their, you don't have to hire, you can get everything you want from those giant companies with the right people and the team that actually gives a shit about you without kind of getting consumed by the machine. Yeah. And it's like, on one hand, the headlines are like, yeah, everyone's going to lose their job because of AI. And I'm like, I think a lot of people working in the enterprise are on the wrong side of the 80-20 rule to begin with.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a blessing. Maybe it's a long time coming. Maybe it's like at no point in human history has there been an innovation transportation didn't die because we lost horses.
Correct. I think today, if you ask my team, more technology will be built because of agentic capabilities rather than less. And why is that? And it's because it's actually economically viable to do so. And as a result of that, we're going to address problems that perhaps we were either backburnered or unable to innovate against in the existing model. So, I ran a $750 million budget at Met, of which 85% of went to compliance, regulatory, brand. I mean, we spent $23 million taking Snoopy off of printing documents because we stopped paying for the Peanuts license. And that took up capacity for almost a year across the globe to get Snoopy off policy forms. And that wouldn't happen today, right? That would be it would be a non-issue, right? And so when I think about it, I think about what would you do differently if you actually addressed what should be table stakes for businesses, right? So things like technology has evolved enough to do some of the things that it never could do before. We can deliver it more cost effectively. As a result, it takes out both the need for some of that maintenance burden to exist. It allows you to address operational constraints that you have because they were created because technology didn't do what it could do because it was too expensive and too hard to do. So you move to the next layer. So you've now dealt with your technical cost. Now you're dealing with some of your operational friction. What does that leave you with? Capacity. It leaves you with time. It leaves you to do some of the things that I keep saying to everybody, yes, all of that's table stakes. And now you can do the yes and, right? And the yes and might be better relationships with your clients, better experiences when people are trying to do things, more product innovation, more, right? And why don't we spend the time and the energy on the more? Because now you've brought down all the costs on all the table stakes, and you're able to deliver those effectively and really, really well at high quality with technology, and you move on to the next thing. Imagine what the world opens up to. Imagine all the things that people might come up with ideas that are suddenly not scary because the business case isn't, that's a $4 million, 9-month project, and it's more like a $50,000 project that might take you 3 weeks to get to market and try it. And if you fail, so what? Right? So what? And you can move on to the next one, and there's just so much more opportunity. That's the way I see it.
Yeah. All right, before we turn it over for questions, it's a little bit contentious.
Ooh.
Not really. She's a controversial friend of mine, the Harvard Business School professor, ex-Harvard Business School professor, Francesca Gino. It's a really close friend of mine, and her and I had lunch in Boston a few weeks ago, and she's been ignominiously, is that a word? I think that's a word. Fired by Harvard. Oh. And she's spent a year fighting them. She's still in court with them, but she's kind of moved on and is doing other things. And she's she said to me, it's only now that I'm on the outside that I'm it's not real. What we teach is not real. It has nothing to do with what business people need to know. So if you were to rewrite the curriculum from Wharton based on your lived experience in the enterprise as an entrepreneur, if HBS was real, what would they teach?
So there are two things that I think are really interesting. Operations was literally the ugliest stepchildren, of all stepchildren when we went to business school. Oh God, we got to take this ops class, right? And if you think about what really makes things buzz and move and change today, it's how can you run your operations better, leveraging technology, leveraging innovation, et cetera. And I think it's been an ugly stepchild, and it's been very neglected in order to actually do things like strategy decks and all of these things that we're all very accustomed to, right? I think that's one thing I would change. And two, I think, and I can't say whether they have this or not, there's like a level of AI fluency that doesn't exist in senior leadership. I see that, and this is what I see in enterprise, we're either underrepresenting what AI can do, or we're overestimating what AI can do. And there's like no happy middle place where like we actually think about what's the impact of AI, what's change management need to be like. AI is not just about the tech, it's about the people and the processes and the organization and the KPIs and metrics being different and the economics being different, and people like kind of change, paradigm shifting all of that, right? Like if you're stuck in the old way of doing things, the challenge of getting from this is how we do it today to this is how we could be doing it in an AI native world is really harsh, right? If you don't have that fluency and the ability to kind of flex and say, okay, like this is what an AI native organization could look like, and this is where we have benefits, and this is where we would measure things differently, because they are different. Yeah. And the old ways I wrote business cases, I shouldn't be writing them anymore, right? They're completely different models, and I don't know that we're teaching that enough. And I think that that's actually where there's real opportunity for people to get really down deep.
When you were about to make that change, what are some of the telltale signs that you can see in others, so you can see that they're now where you were? Because and then they're serious about it, because I hear a lot of people talk about wanting to climb the next mountain and make this change, but I don't think they're ready, and therefore the advice and the counsel and the support doesn't make sense. So like, for when we see people about to go on this next journey, what should we be looking out for?
Quincy and I had this conversation earlier about like our guts tell us things. I watch people's body language when they talk about things, and there's this like untold energy and kind of like enthusiasm for someone who actually wants to do something different. Like there's just, it radiates off them. I recently, we're about to hire this young man. He had a business before, he sold it to a big company, he'd been sitting there, he'd done his earn out. And I talked to him for an entire year. And every time he had this like nervous energy about him, and like how he like would talk about doing something different and like how exciting it was. And one day I called him and I said, "How's it going?" He's like, I think that Friday's my last day. I'm like, "Are you sure? Because you said that like 6 months ago." And he's like, no, this time I'm for sure, right? But he had this like nervous energy about him that was like, he was itching to do something different, and it was like palpable. And I think when somebody has that, you actually have to pull them out, right? And so like he was like, "I'm gonna take the whole summer to figure it out." And I was like, "So here's your contract." Here's my offer, let's talk next week, right? And like a week later, he's like, okay, let's talk about this contract, right? But I think I think you would see it on somebody's face, right? Like the curiosity, the engagement in the conversation, the enthusiasm for what you're doing, and the experiences, the good and the bad, right? Because let's just be clear, being an entrepreneur has good days and has really shit days, right? And you have to be willing to do the ride. And I think that someone who has that energy can do the ride. I don't know about that. I think people wear it on their face.
Yeah.
For someone who's living a truly AI-first, agentic type of way of running your business, I wonder how you manage that with your team. How do you talk to them about their careers? How do you, because there's a lot of unknowns in that way. It's a constantly fluid type of job in this type of world. So I'm just wondering how you tackle that differently.
So, I was recently at a panel. It was all women, right? And it was like, what do we tell our kids about what AI does, and like, what do we do with our own jobs? And I think one of the biggest things that I will say to everybody is that you can't go hide under a pillow and be like, this isn't happening, I think the best thing you can do is actually be open-minded and figure out what it does for you. And it could be in how you plan your next vacation, all the way through to what do I do with it in my daily job. Because if you don't figure it out, They're going to hire some consultant from McKinsey, and they're going to come in and tell you exactly what to do with your job with AI before you turn around and do it. And they may be wrong, right?
Probably.
They've never been operators, so they could easily be wrong. So it's incumbent upon you to actually have the energy to be like, actually, that's a great idea. However, I see a lot more fundamental value when I use it over here to do this thing. And I think part of that is the desire to be lifelong learners, but I think giving people the ability and the space to do that, but also saying, I do it myself, right? And I think that sometimes gives people space because they don't always think of people being open-minded to change and open-minded to trying things. Like, you know, we were talking about trying to start a business and doing Claude Code and like, you know, figuring out if you can do it yourself, right? Yeah, do that, right? Do the hard things. So when you do have a conversation with your people, it's not about like, well, you should totally do that. If you're not doing it yourself, like you're not eating your own dog food, like how are you trying to feed it to other people? So I think there's an aspect of like owning it.
Yeah, so I was wondering just a bit about your journey and comparing that with someone who has a corporate experience, network and stuff, and then wanted to start out something versus, I would say, the new generation jumping on AI, which is just 20 years old, working around the clock in San Francisco, having hacker houses. That's what I see a lot of in social media. And I was like, okay, it's probably not really my track.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice on sort of
Yeah.
if someone is like 20 years older in their career?
Yeah, so I'm laughing because I think that there's a place for all sorts of like innovation and folks, right? In the industries that are much more difficult to penetrate with new solutions, I think there's two different approaches. One is you come with a hyper innovative solution and you are able to get to the right stakeholder that believes in you. In insurance, what we found, and in financial services, what we found, trust, right? When I walk into a room and I have a conversation, I've actually sat in a call center with an underwriter in the middle of Iowa to listen to a life insurance application. I've actually sat and done a claim for an auto policy. I've actually been in the reinsurance room when we're building towers for reinsurance. When you talk to someone from a place of knowledge and experience in this industry, I'm not saying it's valid for all, but like for highly regulated, highly risk-averse industries with fiduciary responsibilities to the markets they serve, that trust matters more than anything. When I get to the end of a phone call and my team, you know, says thank you for the time, people actually thank us because they didn't have to explain it to us. They thank us because they're like, this is awesome. You knew what I wanted before I told you because you've experienced it in some way, shape, or form. And it's so meaningful. I don't do PowerPoint presentations, ever. I just have conversations with people and then we build them solutions that matter to them. And that's the difference. The difference is in that building that trust layer. And I think that matters across all industries in some way, shape, or form, but it really matters in the industries we serve.